What's up? My name is Eddie. I am a political science major at Loras College. Former Bernie Sanders intern, currently just still volunteering and stuff for Bernie. But we want to start this YouTube channel to just talk about current politics because we know quite a bit of stuff at this point, and we just want to talk about it and share it with people.
Yeah, my name's Brock. I'm a social work and psych major at Loras. Both of us wrestle here, by the way. And yeah, I've just been learning a lot of stuff in the past few years about how screwed up this country is, and it just makes me sad that I happen to stumble across this and no one else really knows about this. So we wanted to start this channel, hopefully spread the word, get it out there. If you disagree, feel free to tell us in the comments.
Please, we'll have you on the show. We'll have anyone on the show. You can come argue with us. I am open to debate anyone about any issue. So.
Yeah, we might not be 100% right all the time, but we think we are pretty grounded in facts and good research. So, I mean, call us out if you think we're wrong, but this is all coming from good sources. Anyway, so we have a club here at Loras called the Loras Labor Club, where we just talk about working class issues basically. And last Thursday, we did a showing of the documentary 13th here. And it is just a mind-blowing documentary that just shows the incredibly racist, incredibly screwed up prison system, starting from the abolition of slavery to modern day, and how basically it's a continuation of slavery where you still have people in there right now working for like $2 an hour. Just getting screwed by the system.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about it, and we're going to give a lot of statistics, and a lot of our stats will be the same ones that they have in that movie. But please watch the movie, especially if this is interesting to you. Like, the movie is so artistically well done and powerful. It does a better job than we ever could, because it turns the stats into real things, you know. So when you hear 2.3 million people are currently incarcerated in the U.S., that sounds bad. But this movie shows you the devastating effect that has, and it is extremely grounded in facts, and it makes such a sharp argument. And I mean, in the movie, there's this one scene, this one picture that really sticks with me. This dude just looks like my old roommate, black guy, and he's trapped behind bars in this movie, and it shows him just looking sad. And for some reason, that just gets to me, because that could be him. That's the reality for 2.3 million people. And of course, there are violent offenders, you know, but there are so many non-violent drug offenders in jail right now, you know. And for what? What is the point of that? You know, is that really the best way to treat people who are on drugs? Clearly, it's not, because the recidivism rates in this country are insane. And which country has the lowest drug rates? Portugal. What do they do in Portugal?
They don't treat you like scum of the earth when you do drugs. They actually look at you as a person and realize, oh, you've probably been through some trauma. There's probably been some really hard stuff in your life. We're going to treat you like a freaking human being and try to get you the treatment that you deserve. Instead of using taxpayer money to lock you up and make your life a living hell, we're going to give you social workers. We're going to give you anything we can to try to make you better. And guess what? It worked. Starting in the 80s, there was just a horrible drug problem in Portugal, people using and dying in the streets, HIV was rampant, and for 20 years they tried the American model of punish, doing everything they can to stop it. Then one day they realized, this isn't working, screw it, Hail Mary, we're legalizing all drugs, we're going to have great programs for those who are on drugs, needle exchange programs, so if you're caught using drugs, you're not put in jail. We're going to put you on a system to help you slowly get clean, which research proves is just the best way to do it. It's what helps people get better. And guess what? Their recidivism rates dropped massively. Their HIV rates were reduced to almost nothing. It was just incredible work. It's proven it worked. Why don't we do it here?
The lowest drug rates in the world are in the only country where drugs aren't treated as a criminal issue. And we don't have anyone even arguing to move to that system. I mean, as much as we love Bernie Sanders, he's not for decriminalization. He's not for the Portugal model, which is like, why? Why is a progressive are we not pushing for this? The only one who brought it up in the election cycle this year was Andrew Yang, which thank you, Andrew Yang, for bringing that up. We need to be pushing for these needle exchange programs, because no matter what your thoughts are on drugs, even if you do really think they are immoral and people should be punished for being on drugs, our current system doesn't work. So after 1 year, 44% of people go back to jail. After 2 years, 68% of people go back to jail. Sorry, 3 years. And after 5 years, 77% of people who leave jail go back to jail. It's like, of course, think about it. If I'm smoking crack and you lock me in a cage with other people who smoke crack, and that's it, then you just let me out of the cage later, either when I post bail and give you money, which of course is what they really want, or I do my time. Am I going to go back out into society and do anything different now? Probably not, because when I get back out into society, I've now had my right to vote taken away because I'm a felon, so they don't treat you like a human. And then you can't get a good paying job anywhere because you have a felony on your permanent record. So people leaving the cage that they were just trapped in are now put right back into the same situation, only worse. So only now they have felony on their permanent record, and they can't vote anymore to change it, and they end up going back every time. And is that surprising?
That whole process, the prison that houses them, the food to feed them, that whole court process, all the guards you have to hire, all of that is your taxpayer money that isn't going into stuff you want. What if we put that into programs that help these people, make them contributing members of society, make them not miserable, put it towards something that works, not towards filling someone's pocket, which we'll get to in a second.
Right. And what's the point of prison? It's partially, and this is written into the law, part of it is punishment, right? Because you harm society, you do a violent crime, and we want you to be punished for that crime. But then the other side of it is rehabilitation, because what's the point if you just let someone go and they go do the same crime again? So why are the prisons massively overcrowded and not stocked with social workers and teachers to help these people get back out there? So we've hit on the problem of the drug war, Nixon's war on drugs in the 70s, which we can show a graph right now of the effect that Nixon and other policies, which we'll talk about, what they've done to the incarceration rates. But not only the war on drugs, even if it is a violent offender, like, do you want them to go be locked in a cage if they're violent and learn nothing and then be released? Or would you like them to be helped? Would you like there to be lots of people in there helping to train them out of these habits and find a purpose in life, and then leave prison, find a good job, and be a functioning member of society? But that's simply not how we do it. And it all comes down to the profit motive, of course, as always.
So we have 4 out of every 5 people that go to jail are going to go back within 5 years, compared to a country like Sweden has a 40% recidivism rate. Theirs is half of what ours is. If there are other ways of doing it, other ways of working, why are we not trying to push towards these? Why is no one talking about these when this is such a big issue? Mm-hmm. Profit motive.
Yeah, so a study by followthemoney.org in 2012, it just followed 16 different states and the amount of prison lobbying that went on there, just the amount of lobbying that actual prisons were doing, and they spent $26.2 million in those 16 states lobbying politicians. So the main recipient, the top recipient right now, is Rick Scott, governor of Florida. What a guy, Rick. Keep serving your donors. That's awesome. I don't know how you sleep at night. But to my next point, the 4th highest elected official in receiving this prison money is, what's his name, Henry Cuellar? Yeah, Henry Cuellar, Texas Democrat. The Progressive Party are also taking money from the same system. And, of course, if I'm a politician and I rely on that prison industry's money to fuel my campaign to get elected, which we know 93% of elections in the United States are decided by the person who raises the most money, I'm not going to go in office and then do something to change the system that's working for them, because they're the ones paying to get me elected, which obviously we know is the fault, or is the problem with basically every issue in the United States, is that our government has been bought by these corporations. You know, we have a capitalist society state capitalism, where basically the state is owned by these corporations. Yeah.
Another thing they go into in the documentary is ALEC, which is, what is that, conglomerate?
Yeah, it's just a lobbying conglomerate of corporations who focus on policy.
Of all these companies who have big stakes in the prison industrial complex. So, Aramark, the people who provide the food for the prison industrial complex, which, by the way, holy crap, there were some horrible things as far as rats and just nasty food they're given to people. But never mind that. Also, fun fact, that's who provides our food here at Loris. AT&T and Verizon were big members in it, and they were charging prisoners like $10 for 10-minute phone calls or something. Just absurd amounts of money that their families have to cover just to talk to their family members who are locked behind bars. Who else? You knew another one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this can segue into a different point. One of them is Pfizer, who's a pharmaceutical company. And they been one of the main members of ALEC, lobbying for the prison industrial complex. And they also are huge advertisers with CNN. So it's like the people we go to get our news, you wonder why they talk about impeachment all day when you have 2.3 million people in jail and people being taken off the streets every day for nonviolent drug offenses, as there are people in Colorado, corporations in Colorado, making money selling weed. What was I saying? Pfizer, yeah. So they own the. Not only are they lobbying our politicians, but they have control over the media. If I'm Wolf Blitzer and I'm a CNN anchor, am I going to do a big segment about how the prison industrial complex is destroying black communities if one of the companies who's writing my paychecks is profiting from that system? No, of course not, which is why nobody knows about this, and which is why we're given the false choice of Democrats versus Republicans when neither of them want to do anything about this important issue, or any important issue.
We're supposed to live in a democracy, and in 2016, we were given the choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
Which one of those is going to tackle the prison industrial complex, you think? Hillary, whose husband Bill in the 90s voted for the crime bill to put mandatory minimums, let's see, and allocate way more money to private prisons from the state. Is it going to be her who does it, or is it going to be Trump, the genius, who of course knows all this about the prison industrial complex? Neither, obviously. And we have got to get Bernie Sanders in office, because although he's not perfect, he is the best option we have, far and away. Why? He's not taking their money. He is completely funded by workers and unions and teachers' PACs give to Bernie, but he's obviously not taking a dime from the prison industrial complex. And that's why we need him in the highest office in the land, because that's the only way we're going to be able to do anything about this.
So we don't agree with everything about Bernie. We don't think he's nearly strong enough about this stuff. But since he's not taking money from ALEC or any of these other evil companies, we are in the driver's seat. We can push for this stuff. We can tell him, because he will listen, because we're the ones who got him there. The common people, the working people.
Exactly. We want a fighter, someone who, not only someone who's going to be for the right things, like love. Elizabeth Warren's okay. She's for a lot of good things as far as regulation on Wall Street and stuff goes, but you need someone who's a fighter, someone who's going to take an adversarial stance against these companies who are buying our government. Someone who's going to say, I am taking you down, not just like, there's some things we can do different, we got to tweak the system. No, this system is eating minority communities alive and eating people in poverty alive, putting them behind cages, and then 77% of them go back after 5 years.
When you watch the documentary, you'll see these aren't people that you negotiate and ask nicely. Do you think that maybe we can not have these people living in miserable conditions, people dying in prisons? No, they're evil people who don't care at all who they're hurting, don't care about the communities they're destroying. All they want is money. They're evil. We need someone who's going to fight and fight hard for this stuff.
Yeah, you use the word evil, which is fair, but I think it's just the power of capital, too. The fact that once people have a way of making money, they do anything they can to cling to that, and they do anything they can to increase their own personal wealth, which is why you see it's so easy for so many politicians and corporations to put the dollar above human lives, you know? Maybe if you showed them the documentary 13th, they wouldn't view themselves as evil, you know, they would see it as, oh, well, they would just rationalize it in their head, because you can rationalize anything to make, you know, if it's making you money. So, like, oh, these people deserve to be in. You see Bill Clinton do it in the documentary. He apologizes, and then some Black Lives Matter protesters show up in 2018. He's apologized about the crime bill. And the Black Lives Matter protesters get under his skin. He's like, oh, well, I took those crack dealers off the streets. You want those crack dealers still out there on the streets? He's not sorry. Dude, he does that because now the tides are turning and people are finally starting to demand that Democrats do something about this because the internet exists and people can read about this stuff. But he's the same. If he was in office right now, he would not do anything about this, you know. The documentary says Obama became the first president to visit a prison. Like, great, we're taking steps forward, but what does that do? We need to change the laws. We need to legalize, tax, and regulate drugs. We need to start needle exchange programs. We need to free all nonviolent drug offenders. We need to stack the prisons with social workers. We need to end solitary confinement, which is should never ever be allowed. That is completely inhumane. That is torture to leave someone by themselves. And the documentary talks about a kid who's been in solitary confinement with no window for 10 years. Like, are you kidding me? Think about that. That is torture. We are torturing people. I don't care what he did. So.
It's a kid. This is people. 2.3 million. Do not really think about that number. 2.3 million people living in these horrible conditions. And maybe some of them deserve it, but so many of those people need help, and the system is not providing it, and we are the only ones who can change it.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, how did this start? It's historically targeted minority groups in the black community. So in 1865, slavery is abolished, and in the South, you have this economic system of slavery. So in the North, they have capitalism, which is wage labor. So your labor creates a profit for a capitalist who owns the factory or whatever, and then they pay you a portion of that. They give you a little scrap so you can eat. In the South, they're not even giving people the scraps yet. They have slavery. They enslave people, and they use that for their labor. So once the North wins the Civil War and slavery becomes abolished, the South now needs to replace that labor. So what you see is they start arresting people, and because there's a provision written into the 13th Amendment that you can essentially do forced labor as long as someone's incarcerated. So people start getting arrested for things like vagrancy, for, you know, 3 black people are standing around outside, a cop comes by and arrests them all, and now you can have them working on the railroad or whatever for free, and you still have that free labor. And the North had to send people in to do something about that, which was ineffectual. But, I mean, you've seen this continue. Prison labor is decreased, and there's other ways corporations are profiting off this, like we said, charging 10 for a phone call and stuff like that. But that still happens. Like, progressive hero Mike Bloomberg was using prison labor for his campaign. So this dude supports stop and frisk, and then takes the people who he throws in jail using stop and frisk and uses them to fund his campaign so he can get elected and put more of his racist policies in place. And that's someone on the left. That's a Democrat. Are you kidding me? How is that any different than Trump? Vote blue no matter who. You know, okay, easy for you to say. You're not sitting in a jail cell. Or you don't know anyone who could be.
Yeah, some things I think we need to make clear are like, number one, this is an incredibly racist, horrible system that has screwed people of color in every way, shape, and form. But more importantly, it's a system motivated by profit. So yes, it's racist, but it was more fueled by racism than it was racist. It's people who wanted the free labor, who wanted the profits, who wanted to do anything they could to make money, and they could do these things very many times by riling up the racist populations of the South. Again, this is all really complicated. We are not doing it justice. You really have to watch the film to really, really get it.
And I mean, all these problems stem from capitalism, because under capitalism, you're always going to have a concentration of wealth and power that continues to be more and more concentrated at the top and gets worse for people at the bottom. It's why you've seen wealth inequality grow for however many years now. It's because that's how capitalism works. And then once those corporations are now so powerful, they've bought the state and they've bought the media, and they're going to do everything they can to hold on to the ways in which they're making money, one of which is the prison industrial complex. So that's the root of all this. You can't do anything about that. It's hard to do anything when people have as much power as they do at this point. Like, you got companies like Exxon, Shell, Chevron, AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, Time Warner, UPS, FedEx, Pfizer, Eli Lilly. This is the few of the 114 companies. A lot of them have left now because of bad publicity, but those were the companies who were funding ALEC. And these are just, those companies are involved in everything. So there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. I want to go buy a Gatorade, and little do I know the company that makes Gatorade is funding the military-industrial complex, profiting off all our wars, funding the military-industrial complex, prison-industrial complex, profiting off having people in jail or using that labor. There's no way. These corporations are so powerful, they own everything, including the state. So what do you do in a system like this? There's nothing you can do except fight the system.
One last point that I think is really, really, really important is this is not a battle of people versus cops. There are so many good police officers out there who are willing to put their life on the line and do all these many things that they can do in order to keep people safe, because that is the profession they want to get into because they have a passion for that. I believe police officers have like the highest suicide rate out of any profession besides the military. Basically, there's a lot of good cops out there. I believe I read somewhere that it's like 2% of cops that are corrupt and racist and evil. And so you can't let those 2% represent the entirety of the police force. It is more the system and the things that went into it and the money that went into it that made it evil. And there's a lot of ways we can improve police-citizen relationships.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not about hating the cops. It's about hating the people who wrote this stupid-ass system.
It's always the system, because think about it. They sell us the individualist philosophy. Like, oh, you think all these people are in jail, you must hate cops. Like, no, but I do hate the fact that we've militarized the police and forced part of their job to be cracking down on drugs, which is clearly something that doesn't work. It's always the system. It's never the individuals, except for maybe when you look at the very top too, which those people at the top who have bought the system are a product of the system too, because it's a system that tells you to acquire more and more wealth, and that being selfish is good because it'll work out in the end for everyone. Thank you, Ayn Rand, for that nonsense, and the Koch brothers for allowing that philosophy to remain today.
Fueling that philosophy.
Yeah. But it's always the system. You can't ever look at individuals. We have to start looking at these things as a societal problem. We have to stop saying, well, what do you mean these people did something they knew was against the law, they belong to be in jail? Like, quit looking at it like that. Look at it as your fellow man who's in jail. And
American.
Yeah, be patriotic. And we're supposed to be a community, and we're supposed to do what's best for society. That's the point of politics and of having laws. And clearly this is not what's best for society, because everyone who goes to jail immediately goes back. And we incarcerate more people than any other country. So why do we look at this thing as such an individual problem? And Bernie will free every nonviolent drug offender. And he can do that with executive orders. So some people's beef with Bernie, I don't think these are real criticisms. These aren't people who actually believe this. It's people who just are trying to take him down. But they're like, what are you going to be able to get passed, in his agenda through Congress, because the system's so corrupt? Fair point, but there's certain things that he can do via executive order that nobody else is even thinking or talking about, and this is one of them. He could make it federally legal and free nonviolent drug offenders, which, whatever you feel about weed, is clearly better for society. Let's be more like Portugal. You guys want to get rid of HIV? Doesn't that sound cool? Sounds cool to me.